Support for the Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you in part by University of Idaho, Idaho's only Carnegie R1 classified research university. Our Carnegie R1 designation recognizes the discoveries we make that help our forests thrive. It means we're creating more doctors and doing real research to strengthen cybersecurity for Idaho businesses, our energy sector, and every Idahoan. More at go.uidaho.edu/Idaho-is-Idaho. Stay informed with Boise State Public Radio's weekly newsletter. Delivered every Tuesday morning, it brings you the latest local news on politics, the environment, arts, and culture. Plus, get highlights from Idaho Matters and the Mountain West News Bureau. Sign up today at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. Every summer here in Idaho, we spend weeks breathing in toxic wildfire smoke as thousands of acres burn in the Gem State. So what is that smoke doing to us, both in the short term and the long term? Dr. Brett Andrews spends a lot of time trying to answer these questions. He's a former associate chief of neurology at Kaiser Permanente, Oakland, and he studies climate health policy. Now, Dr. Andrews talked about this at St. Luke's latest lecture series on climate and health at the neurological impacts of a changing world. And he's here to tell us more. We want to welcome you to the program, Dr. Andrews.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Gemma, and thank you for having me.
Well, such an important conversation to be having.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you really quickly, you are co-director of Neurologists Interested in Climate and Health. Can you just start off by telling us what the niche is and what do you do exactly?
Well, I am a neurologist in the Bay Area, and I work part-time here, but I spend a lot of my time on advocacy around this trying to change policy and inform people. And back in 2023, I was asking doctors about this. Did they know about the research connecting climate change, air pollution with diseases like stroke and dementia? The research was showing, and they didn't. So I joined with several other concerned neurologists, Beth Mallow, Larry Junk, and Ali Saad, to address this. And we've since presented to neurology departments and other doctor organizations around the country. And like the St. Luke's lecture last week, we're also advocating for more climate health education, including of our medical student trainees, more research, and really emphasizing to doctors that they are a trusted voice to communicate to their patients and to policymakers about this.
So can we talk a little bit more about some of the neurological health effects of air pollution and climate change? Because you mentioned stroke. You've reported that the incidence of stroke can go up 14 to 20% due to air pollution?
That's right. In general, we're seeing that air pollution has many health consequences. And in the United States, it's estimated over 1,000 premature deaths are due to air pollution, and cardiovascular disease, which includes stroke and heart attack and other heart conditions, is about half of that cause. We also see that climate change driven extreme heat related deaths are more on the order of several thousand in the US, but they're also growing. So early air pollution research in the 1960s contributed to passing the Clean Air Act in 1970 and increasing protection policies that we have benefited from. But now growing research is showing us more details. And besides asthma and chronic lung diseases, research now shows that neurological conditions are connected, like stroke, dementia, and Parkinson's disease with air pollution. And additionally, cancer, low birth weights, autism, and other conditions. So we also know that more stroke and dementia-related hospitalizations happen with extreme heat, but at lower rates than with air pollution.
So we live in Idaho, as I mentioned in the intro, and we get quite a bit of exposure to wildfire smoke most summers. Can you talk to us a little bit more in depth about how wildfire pollution impacts our health?
Sure. Um, Wildfire air pollution, like that from other fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are driving the bigger picture in the United States of air pollution broadly. These wildfire air pollution events are also toxic, and they can be especially toxic if the fuel that's burning includes buildings and human-made things with plastic chemicals
Mm.
and metals in them. So, research connects wildfire smoke pollution as adding to the overall fossil fuel burden of disease by adding lung disease, cardiovascular disease like the stroke and heart disease, and more dementia. And there are also studies which have connected wildfire smoke with increased brain tumors and decreased cognitive function.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, um, this is not just a problem in Idaho in the fact that, we get wildfires and there is toxic smoke because as we know, it seems like we see wildfires not only getting worse every year, but in numerous parts of the world where maybe historically we hadn't seen so many wildfires. So is this becoming a global issue?
Yes, wildfires are growing in their severity, their frequency, and the distribution or areas that are being burned. We can think of like Lahaina and Brazil,
Hmm.
where we didn't see these kind of wildfires. Also, like in Idaho, where it's growing, um, in the last 20 years, 10 to 15 times the severity and extent in an area. And Canada's seeing the same thing. Canadas are so big and so broad that they're coming across, especially to the Midwest and Northeast, and causing health harm. And they generated in 2023 more carbon than any other country but the top three emitters, the US, China, and India, in their carbon. And what's the problem is this is continuing to grow so that
Hmm.
these bad years may become more the norm. It's estimated that over a third of the total air pollution deaths in the US annually could be from wildfire smoke now, and like 40,000 per year, and that could be over 70,000 by mid-century. Uh, so it's a big issue.
So, can you talk a little bit more about those numbers? Because I know you mentioned that 40,000 number of people dying every year because of wildfire smoke. I mean, that's very stunning because I think that we would not correlate necessarily, smoke to this amount of people uh, dying. So
Mhm.
can you talk to us a little bit more about what you found? Because I believe you have a study out about this.
Well, there are many studies that are linking and contributing to that total wildfire death. So the neurologic diseases are a smaller fraction of that, but we see the lung diseases and we see the cardiovascular diseases as the primary drivers. Like with air pollution in general, it's probably about half of the total contribution there. And the soot that comes from air pollution, whether it's from wildfires or from fossil fuels, is a huge driver of health problems. It's going to the lungs, and deep in the lungs, on the surface of the lungs, it can cause inflammation. And we know the smallest of those soot particles are crossing into the bloodstream, and we can see changes. We're seeing uh, actual changes in the brain or other organs from this process.
So here in Idaho, we spend a lot of time looking at the air quality index during the summertime, to see the level of air pollution and, is it safe to go outside? Can you talk about this index and how you say really there is no safe level of air pollution?
Yeah. The research that I've been describing about neurologic disease shows that even down into the range that we might consider green, when we look at that color scale that the EPA uses for the air quality in a given day, if we are exposed to those levels over a longer period of time, like annually, this contributes to those conditions that we see of stroke, dementia, and so forth, lung disease. And there aren't necessarily safe levels. Some of these numbers are coming out well in the green range. So it is concerning, and our goal should be to be eliminating air pollution as much as possible. Um, if the recommendations would be if you're having a bad wildfire day, that's like getting over
Mhm.
yellow. Consider wearing even an N95 mask. They have ones which have one-way valves, so you can breathe more easily, but they would pick up some significant amount of those particles, which could be damaging our bodies. And as well,
Mm.
running HEPA filter air purifiers inside our houses, because that outside air can and does go into our homes.
So, Dr. Andrews, there are a lot of other studies out there that show how extreme heat and smoke can impact our health. Can you maybe just touch on just a few of those studies and what we're learning about them?
So, extreme heat, in the past couple of years, there's been a number of papers that have come out with large populations around the world um, showing that there is an association with more stroke events and more stroke deaths and more events where people are hospitalized with dementia and dementia related death. And so what's happening is the extreme heat is driving an instability in the physiology of our bodies, putting us under stress so that we can have not just traditional heat stroke, but we can have events where it sets off our vulnerability for true strokes, blockage of the arteries, or some events that are destabilizing and hurt us, including heart attacks and so forth. So it's a stressor which is multiplying our chronic diseases and making them more dangerous.
So, what do we need to do to reduce the health harms from climate change and air pollution?
So basically, we need to slow global warming and reduce air pollution by weaning off of fossil fuels and electrifying basically everything with clean energy like solar and wind. While that's a tall order, we really need to start doing that and really working on it sooner rather than later because it's kind of like an inflationary process. It's causing drought, extreme temperatures, and other extreme weather events, which are costly, both health-wise, but they cause economic stress. And addressing them now will reduce our increasing taxes, our increasing insurance, the burden on our whole economy.
So, what can we do then on an individual level? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we can electrify our homes and our transportation. We can minimize air travel if we can, and also eat less red meat, which is strongly associated with very strong greenhouse gas effects and high water usage. But we also need to start looking in a broader view. How are we going to change the polarization and situation that we're in right now?
So, can you talk about doctors building bridges, and
Yeah.
because you've talked about this, and really taking blame and party politics out of the equation to create real change and to keep us from backsliding into our policies. Is that possible?
I think it's possible. I think doctors have a major role, but I also think all of us have a role. We can't simply sit back and rely on some individuals to try to make the changes alone. I think we all have a role to play. So for doctors, we have a special health voice that is trusted. Research shows that we poll very high, even now, with trust. And so we can talk to our patients and we can talk to policy leaders about the health effects and stay strongly on that it's really about health. But also, we as individuals need to take this long view that things are going to get better if we start building bridges. So doctors can build bridges, but we all can build bridges. And it often starts with one conversation at a time. You know, we may not realize, but despite all this politicization, where we're polarized and blaming, we actually agree a lot more than we realize. In 2025, just last fall, there was a poll of voters that showed that two-thirds of voters agree global warming is affecting the cost of living. And a majority of voters agree we should regulate carbon dioxide, the major greenhouse gas, and transition the U.S. economy off of fossil fuels by 2050. So if we can agree on that, what we need to translate is that there's some urgency here, that this is inflationary, and we have to take action and take that long view. So we start these conversations with health professionals, but also with our neighbors and the people who may seem like they're of a different frame of mind, because they probably do agree. And if we can agree on what's important that we all agree on, our health, our community's health, the future of our children and grandchildren, we can start to rebuild that connection and move forward in policy, because it's going to take this large consensus to move us forward as a country.
Well, I want to thank you so very much. We've been talking with Dr. Brett Andrews, a former Associate Chief of Neurology at Kaiser Permanente, Oakland, and he studies climate health policy. He was a featured speaker at St. Luke's latest lecture series on climate and health. We'll put a link to that talk and info on the next talk about economic growth, climate change, and health, which is set for February 4th. Just go to our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudet.
Hey, I'm Peter Pruitt from Zoo Idaho.
And I'm Dr. Leif Tapinola with the Idaho Museum of Natural History.
Together we host The Nature of Idaho, a podcast all about how our state's amazing landscapes, wildlife, and geology shape life here in the Gem State.
Each week we dive into nature stories from across Idaho, everything from fossils to forests, and sometimes even a few fun facts you can share on your next hike.
So join us as we celebrate everything that makes wild Idaho special.
Listen to The Nature of Idaho from KISU, wherever you get your podcasts, or at KISU.org.